next we're coming up to what's possibly the most, well, not entirely creative because we've had plenty of 2D sections before this point. But it is very creative having what's basically an entire level where it's mostly just taking place in the 2D sections. Of course, eventually, as you'd expect, you have to do some platforming, and the platforming controls of this game are very stiff. Like, if it was Zelda 2, then if it was Zelda 2 controls, then it would be great. But unfortunately, there's this undescribable thing about the controls for the platforming that makes me not feel confident doing it. When normally platforming in platformers is piss easy for me, like in Mega Man, it's easy. Not that the platforming in this level is particularly difficult, though. Why are they... Well, they are skeletons. I guess it makes sense that their bones would be immune to simple pumpkin seeds being flung at them. Like, oh yeah, you have infinite ammo for the slingshot in this game too, by the way. I guess the bomb bag or whatever that comes with every single ammo thing in this game is like really magical, so it's an infinite one. Makes you kind of wish that it was always that way. I mean, you could say that it would wreck the challenge if in every Zelda game you had infinite bombs and stuff. But they did it in this game and nobody really cared. And you always have so much ammo anyways that does it really matter whether it's infinite or not? Also, they had infinite ammo in between worlds. So, here's the thing. There isn't really that much left for me to talk about with this game. Fortunately, I do have, like at least one last piece of trivia about this game. The remixed Super Mario Bros. Theme used in the special world of Mario World is in this game. Since all the game's actual music is sequenced, it wouldn't fit anywhere in the game, but it sounds really nice. I think what it means by sequenced is like not MIDI or like sounds orchestral but isn't. Like the Mario World theme basically sounds like it does in Mario World. So I have no idea why they put it in this game if they're not going to use it. I mean, if they wanted to have it there for an Easter egg, then fine. At least put it somewhere and use it instead of just having to be wasting code. Maybe it was used as a placeholder to test out whether the sound was working, but they could have had literally any sound or music do that. And see, the platforming here is not exactly hard. You're gonna get one really tight jump later though. Yeah. One thing about this level is that I did a lot of wandering around because I wasn't entirely sure of where to go. You'd go through a lot of staircases, like in this level. Like that, of course, because it's a tower. And sometimes it got overwhelming for me, and I forgot which ones I had already gone up and which ones I hadn't. It makes sense that you get to take advantage of the fire rod as well, because it is the ice world after all. It doesn't entirely look like you can jump over those, I guess, pole things there, but you actually can, which is good, because that lets you progress. But yeah, I have some trivia about Twilight Princess here. This is actually pretty funny. I remember this. Why did I write out ooh? I mean, it's kind of forced comedy because, really, why did he write out ooh? Sure, he's a ghost, but what exactly compels ghosts in the media to say that? Let alone write it out. But, like, it is nice that they tried for that kind of comedy. Especially since they very easily could have just had the ghost be there and, like, not had it just be written down. I guess you have to have the links separated to be allowed to push it and not be able, and you can't push it into one of the links. That block was really finicky. One of the main new gimmicks that this place introduces, though we're long past the point in the game where new gimmicks are introduced regularly for every level, but the colored blocks that you push, like, well, obviously they've been there since World 1, but the way they're used is unique. Because, yeah, they take the place of what... They're in places where you'd expect regular blocks to be. Which makes it a little bit more tedious, actually. Makes it take longer. And they're also, like you would push some blocks earlier, and then you'd be able to progress. But... anyways, like, there really isn't that much left to talk about with this game. I love spamming that cheap attack, the downward thrust over and over. Like, sure, it's cheap, but it's a smart thing to do. And I kind of like this, like, waiting for the thwomp to get high enough for me to jump up on top of him. Like, it's unique that they have thwomps here. Oh god. There's another thing for me to talk about. I hate getting frozen in this game. Especially in this dungeon. Like, you'd expect freezing to be something that happens the most in one of the previous levels, but instead, the freezing happens most of all here, and you constantly have to wiggle the control stick to get out of it. And it's very tedious. And what's most enraging about it is that you can't switch links while you're frozen, which really becomes annoying in the boss fight later. But in that previous section, you just had to wait for all of the icicles to fall one by one, and they'd actually create a floor for you to progress on, which is cool. And they kind of... There's really no point in having giant force gems that are disguised as soldiers here if they're going to play the music for enemies ambushing you. So you immediately know what they really are. There's really no point. I remember one of them being an actual force gem, but... oh yeah, here I'm showing off that when you're in a 2D section, you can't do any sort of formations at all. Which makes sense. Because, really, how would that even work? Aside from the horizontal formation, none of them would be possible. Like, it would have been more creative to have an entire level where you were mostly in the dark world, and we're switching between light world just as occasionally as you go into these top-down sections in this level. But I guess the 2D is a nice touch. Like, it makes sense for this to be the mostly 2D level because it's about progressing upwards. And so that's what you're doing. These Bombchus are an annoyance because there's so many of them, combined with the bats constantly attacking you. So it's... like, really, it just kind of gets difficult to avoid getting hit, and every time you get hit, you lose money. This was another level that I was worried that I wouldn't have enough force gems to beat it, but I don't think, like, so far at least, I don't think there is a single level in this game where you can't beat it on the first try with enough force gems. Here's the very tight jump that I was alluding to earlier. It's always funny hearing, like, a whole bunch of different links scream out from falling into a pit, and then, like, you hear just one of them, or vice versa. Like, normally their screams are annoying, but, like, that was always one of the sources of comedy for this game. Like, when I was a kid, I would intentionally have them scream out from falling into the pit over and over again. Like, it's funny having Link get positioned so that he always knocks one of the other Links into the pit over and over again. He's just trapped because every time he respawns, he gets knocked into the pit again. Now, this is just trial and error. There's no possible way you could know which switches you have to hit first, but it just takes away 2 seconds, so whatever. But yeah, I watched the Hellfire Com's commentary of Twilight Princess like years ago, and that's how I got some different things to talk about for Twilight Princess when I eventually, like, inevitably ran out of stuff to say about it. And I actually have like a whole bunch of different pages, like, of stuff that I still haven't gotten to mention yet. So I don't really care. I'm just gonna mention them, just I guess have an excuse to reminisce about the game. I mean, I hope that's not too awkward commentary-wise. I mean, like, there's really nothing to talk about so far other than, like, doing blow-by-blow commentary. Like, here I'm attacking these blue choo-choos. It's weird that they have... Yeah, I just realized there was Zelda 2 reference. Those are the same enemies from Zelda 2, like the bits and bots. That's actually pretty cool. I didn't notice it because they're not the... Well, actually, they are the same color. They're not shaped exactly the same way. They're the ones that were in Zelda 2 were oval shaped. But anyways, about Twilight Princess. The falling rocks in Death Mountain are completely random. There's no set patterns for them, which obviously makes them a speedrunner's nightmare. I don't like these rooms because, like, I mean, sure, they give you a whole bunch of hearts, but how are you supposed to know that it's just heart? How are you supposed to know that it's just hearts that are under the jars? Like, you'll probably go in there, like, multiple playthroughs, not realizing that the only thing in those rooms are jars with hearts in them. For all you know, there's a floor switch under them, so it just completely wastes your time. I mean, why would you... I mean, with all the amount of force fairies that you have, why would it even matter that you can get hearts anyways? Aside from the fact that when you die, you constantly have to sit through an animation of being revived, which wastes a few seconds of your time. I consider that to be enough of a punishment for dying without having to restart the entire level all over again. Which I assume is what happens if you run out of lives, but I don't think that's ever happened to me before. You have to really suck at the game, because this is a brand new save file, and I'm already at like 73 force fairies. This boss, at first I was having fun, but it became dragged out and like long and tedious, like particularly by the final phase, where it really should have ended before that point. Like, first you have to get rid of the flying things by sending long-range projectile fireballs at it. And, like, this boss constantly has you switching between the Roc's Feather and the Fire Rod. With the Roc's Feather, you can attack the boss with the upward thrust attack and with the normal attack when it's close enough to you. When it's flying close enough to you. But it's generally not going to do that. And this is my least favorite part of the boss fight. They constantly hit you off those tiny platforms that are your only way of being high up enough to jump at them and attack them. Because otherwise I can send, like, fireballs at them. But because you're inexplicably not allowed to go into even the horizontal formation in the 2D section, it's not like you can speed things up by sending 4 different fireballs up at them at a time. So if you have the Fire Rod, the only way you can attack them is just one fireball at a time, and it takes a while. I mean, at least you can kill multiple of them at once with it, as you see here. So I guess that's a better strategy. But I just, like, this boss drags out. But it was like it was fun at first, like particularly in the middle of it. Anyways, Eldin Province has circles in its design, which contrasts the Twilight, which is more about like squares, like hard, like lines, being futuristic. And Luda is 15 years old. Renato is 40 years old. The shaman in Kakariko Village has a tough leather getup, which is like armor, apparently. Is Renato a Sheikah? I don't think they ever directly confirmed that. I mean, he looked like a Sheikah. He had a Sheikah emblem on him. But for some reason, Zelda's always been very shy about showing us the Sheikah. We'll never see an entire village of just Sheikah. They're always this ancient tribe that is like almost extinct. Like, it would be nice to see at least one game of that. And this is the final phase where the boss really felt like it dragged out. Because it shoots ice at you. And the ice will constantly freeze you over and over again. And every single time you get frozen, you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. And you have to, it takes forever to unthaw. And what's bullshit is that when you're using the fire rod, you would think that the fire would melt the ice and prevent you from getting frozen. You would think that would be a legitimate strategy that you could do, but no, apparently the game designers didn't think of that. Apparently they didn't think that fire could melt ice. And it looks like the fire doesn't hurt him here, but if you send a fireball at him, it does. Like, he doesn't like to cooperate, he doesn't like to be close enough to you for you to hurt him.
Goromoto is the first Goron Elder you meet, and he's obviously named after Miyamoto. He's Gora Shigeru in the Japanese version. These Goron Elders are trying to prevent Darbus from escaping, and each one has personality to their rooms. Like the Pillars of Smoke on that Goron, according to Hyrule Historia.
I really felt like this was the end of the boss fight, but instead they arbitrarily force you to do it 2 more times after this, which made me worry that the boss was scripted.
The Pillars of Smoke on that Goron, according to Hyrule Historia, is based on an old Chinese medicine where they stuck you with needles and set them on fire.
But see, does this look fun? Like, how are you supposed to avoid getting frozen by him? You aren't exactly given much space in the arena to work with.
I like how so many dungeons in Twilight Princess have more goals than just finding keys. Like you find monkeys, shards of the big key, or food items in Snow Peak. Like, it's very refreshing.
And because it's not like you can just stay on the bottom of the arena and shoot fireballs upwards, because, well, one, I'm pretty sure the fireballs will get blocked by the platforms. But 2, it constantly moves around left and right, so it's going to, by the time that you sent your fireball up at him, he's going to have moved out of the way.
Why doesn't Link's hat fall off when he's upside down on the magnet ceiling? Is there metal on its tip attracted to the magnet? Like, automatic operating cranes are very advanced for Hyrule standards. You'd think the Gorons would have taken over the whole kingdom with such advanced technology if it was exclusive to them. And also, you can see the Goron Ruby on the doors in that dungeon.
I mean, the only good thing I can say, like, definitively, is that at the very least, they bothered to have an original boss fight. Which is especially good because this is a significant part of the game. You're heading to a brand new world, but in a way that hasn't been done before in this game. Like every other game, you get teleported somewhere, but it's at the very least, well, you'll see. The strategy guide for this says, "Beam me up, Scotty," when it talks about you going up into the teleporting beam. Like, in general, the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide, it divides the levels into sections, and each section has an attempt at a joke as a title. And I can imagine, like, some of them fell flat because there are so many different lines that they would run out of good jokes eventually. Like, I can't exactly remember one off the top of my head. Like, you would expect that in a place called the Tower of the Winds that it would be the final dungeon of the game because Vati is inexplicably a wind sorcerer all of a sudden now. But instead, it isn't. Which is good because I have fond memories, at least, of the next world. And it makes a lot more sense for the next world to be the Wind World. In a speedrun in Twilight Princess, you can enter the horse taming event as a wolf and have Wolf Link take Epona. It prevents half of the village from spawning and makes it possible to fall into the void. they tried to mash the two Link models together, and it looks like the screen has huge cracks. Particularly, that happens like in Kakariko Village when you get the horse back finally. Yeah, that's always kind of funny.